Hello, everyone. I'm Ellie from Nourishment Redacted, and welcome to Lioness Lifestyle Live. This is a show where we honor a keto, carnivore, or a meat-based woman. They share their experience and their healing journey to inspire and bring our community together.
And I am Cristie from Meeting Wellness. It's so nice to meet with all of you this evening. We've all been inspired by somebody's story, and here at Lioness Lifestyle, we believe that sharing these stories is one of the very best ways to help people who are sick and without hope.
And I'm Adrian of Adrian K. Gledhill. This is a place where we're going to lift each other up. We're going to share women's stories of different women healing and getting healthier lives by eating more meat. Get your questions ready tonight. Is that where we are? If so, Put a QQQ or a question mark in front, and we'll be sure to get it to our awesome guest.
And with that, it is time for this week's Roar of the Week. This is the favorite Roar of the Week ever, right out of the gate, and I didn't even pick it. You can't blame me. I think Ellie picked this one.
I did.
So this is from Eric. Eric, if you're watching now, he usually chimes in at the end. If you're watching now, give us a shout, say hello. But this is from Eric. This is how he ends the show every week with a very simple, short and sweet roar, picanha, roar. So thank you so much, Eric. And if you want to be shouted out on next week's show, then after the show, drop us a comment down below the episode, and we'll be happy to hunt through those and choose someone to shout out for next week's roar.
Did we like that I had the picanha banner ready? I knew it. It was like, I was ready for that.
Button pusher. She's the button pusher.
Okay, everyone. So let's get ready for our guest for tonight. We're so excited to have her. We had her on before, and we're so happy to welcome back Meghann.
Hello.
Welcome. Meghann, we had you on before, but it was near the end of the show, so we're so glad to give you a full time slot so we can really just learn so much about you. If they missed you before, share with us who you are and your health journey, please.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me back. I'll try to keep my story as brief as possible because it's pretty lengthy. But my name is Meghann Hempel. I am the owner of Brain, Body, and Beyond LLC. I am a food addiction and weight loss specialist. My journey really stems back all the way from age 9. I was a very obsessive compulsive child, struggled with anxiety, depression, ADD, ADHD, all of the things. My parents put me on medications at age 9 because they didn't know any better. They thought they were doing the right thing for me. So I was on pharmaceuticals for almost 20 years because I didn't know any better, and I was listening to my doctor. And at a very young age, when I was put on them, I gained a significant amount of weight. My brain function was absolutely terrible. I grew up in a constant fog, a zombie, just really struggled with school. And I was just so insecure because I had no confidence because I was a chubby kid, a lot of fat kid jokes because of the weight gain. And I didn't feel smart because, like I said, my brain was just so foggy. And looking back, it was definitely the psych meds that I was on. So age 16 came around and I found the gym. And I thought that, you know, if I had nothing to offer the world, maybe I could at least be pretty and fit. So that's where I kind of got into the gym. I started seeing results. I started to like seeing what it was in the mirror. And I kind of started to get a little addicted to the gym. And definitely started to develop some disordered behaviors around food. I did forget to mention at age 9, when I was placed on those medications, I also had this undying appetite. Like no amount of food was ever enough. And I almost was always very embarrassed and felt ashamed about how much food I could eat. Like I knew it wasn't normal and it was very out of control. So there was a lot of shame there. So when I found the gym, I became addicted to the gym. I would basically purge through working out and was also purging in other ways, right? Like I was just trying to keep up and run off this terrible diet. But I didn't realize it was disordered. I didn't realize that doing 3 hours of cardio at the gym and making myself throw up was disordered at the time. So fast forward a little bit, age 20, I got pregnant, young, dumb, making really bad decisions. And I got pregnant, knew my daughter's father for about 3 weeks, had no idea what I was going to do because I was basically a baby myself, but I knew in my heart what I needed to do. So I had my daughter and she's like literally my greatest blessing. I can't imagine life without her. But during my pregnancy, the whole thing was traumatizing. It was doom and gloom. Like there was this shame, this embarrassment. I was, a baby having a baby, no college education. Like I didn't know how I was going to survive. So I literally hid in my childhood bedroom for about 9 months, ate like ungodly amounts of food because that was my coping mechanism. After I gave birth, I was over 200 pounds, and I'm not a big girl. Like I'm 5'3", so 200 pounds after I gave birth from my daughter. So at this time, I'm still on psych meds. I'm, trying to pay the bills, trying to survive. So at age 24, we're fast forwarding a little bit, age 24, at that time, my daughter was probably about 3 years old. I was nannying. And at the time, it was like a good paying job for somebody who didn't have a college education, but I was miserable, hated my life. My anxiety was terrible. My depression was terrible. Mental health was so poor. And I call this kind of like a quarter life crisis. Like, what am I doing? And I had a friend who had encouraged me to really look into getting off of the psych meds. He was like, Meghann, these things are probably causing way more harm than good in your life. And I thought about it, but I also thought that he was absolutely crazy, like for me to get off of these things because I had been on them for 20 years. Like, what was I going to do? Like, just get off of them? Then what? But I found this book. It was called Anatomy of an Epidemic. And that was probably the biggest shift of the turning point for me. It was called Anatomy of an Epidemic, and it talked about how psych meds, how they alter the brain and what they can do to you and the long-term side effects. And during that moment of reading this book, I had so many aha moments of just so much emotions. And I remember feeling angry and crying and sadness of like my whole life started to make sense. Like, this is why I have felt the way that I felt my whole life. And these drugs were actually feeding my poor mental health. So I cold turkeyed off of these medications. Now, for anyone listening, never, ever, ever cold turkey off of psych meds. It is so dangerous. I am so lucky. I went through 5 years of psychiatric drug withdrawal. Was waking up most days, literally just wanting to die, bricks on my chest, like doom and gloom. But with that being said, I knew that I could, I've always been a fighter, and I just knew that I could either, play victim, or I could write a really good damn story out of this nightmare, right? And so during those 5 years of psychiatric drug withdrawal, I accomplished more than I ever had in my entire life. I went, got my fitness certifications, pursued firefighting, became emergency medical technician, did all of these things while being a mother and trying to pay the bills. And I'm still like a hot mess, but you would never know because I didn't show it. During this time, during this mess and this chaos, my food addiction got really, really bad, like out of control. It was my coping mechanism. And during this time too, I'm also in the health and wellness space, preaching, live that healthy lifestyle, balance, moderation. And here I am in the background, literally binging and out of control with food. So my parents knew about my food addiction and my bulimia, but I was not vocal about it. Like, it was a little dirty, dark secret. And I got to a place where I knew I was eventually going to die if I didn't get my shit together. And I call it was kind of like a God moment. I was working or pursuing the fire service at this time, and we had a training burn that day. And after that burn, I was exhausted, and I went on a countless binge purge, like multiple times throughout the day. And that night came around, and I'm literally in the bathroom. My world is spinning. My heart is beating out of my chest. And it was just like an aha moment of like, God, like, said to me, I don't know if it was God, like, but it was just like, Meghann, you need to get it together. And I never looked back. My parents had been eating low carb ketogenic at the time. My dad reverses type 2 diabetes, was running like half marathons, you know, got off of all of his meds and reverses type 2. And I actually, because I was kind of big in the CrossFit space at the time, I used to make fun of them and make for eating carbohydrates. And I was so desperate to find a new way that I tried the low carb way of eating. I enrolled myself in a food addiction course that literally kind of just changed my life, and no turning back from there. So fast forward a little bit, I'm, you know, food sober, things are good. 2 months into my career in the fire service, I had a traumatic brain injury, fell backwards out of the ambulance, landed on my head, lost my entire career. I thought I was going to be fine, was not. So lost the whole career. It was very difficult because I felt like, oh my gosh, I've worked so hard. Life was about to get good. And now I'm building all over again. With that being said, it was the biggest blessing ever. After that accident, I knew in my heart that I never wanted to go back for working for anyone else ever again. And that's where my company came into fruition, Brain, Body, and Beyond LLC. And now I am a food addiction coach and weight loss specialist full time. So that's kind of my story in a nutshell.
Wow, that was an awesome nutshell. I remember a lot of those things from, you know, the last time you were with us, but it brought up a question that I don't think that I asked you last time. And you talked about your psychiatric meds, and you also talked about the various conditions. I was curious if any of those medications were for ADHD. And I asked because I have 2 children with ADHD, and one takes medicine when he feels like he needs it, and he's happy doing that. He feels like it helps him. The other one absolutely hated it. He felt like it made him trapped in his own body. And I was like, okay, that's it. We tried it, didn't like it, moving on. But absolutely, it did not sound, I mean, I can't imagine what it felt like. It's hard for me to put myself in his shoes, but it sounded horrible the way he described feeling. So I was wondering, were any of those medications for ADHD? Did you experience something similar?
So I was on a cocktail of medications. I started out on Paxil, then I went to Effexor, and then all at one time I was on Effexor, clomipramine, and then I was on Adderall. Adderall was amazing. Like, it's literally like cocaine. I've never done cocaine, by the way. But from what I've heard of people who have used it, it's like speed. That's what it is. It's a legal substance that is prescribed to you from doctors. Unfortunately, this actually really breaks my heart. I've had friends that had to go to rehab from Adderall. So this is, I try to be so open-minded with everybody because everybody has their own views and opinions on things. And I'm not going to judge you if you want to go on a psych med or if you want to go on Adderall. Like, that's your personal choice. For me personally, everything that I have learned from my own experience, the books that I have read, I would not medicate my child just because the hell that I went through.
You have said something that really rang in my heart a long time ago, which was you talk about exercise as a form of purging. Could you tell us a little bit more about that and what people could look for if that is something that maybe they're struggling with that they don't even know they're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So you hear this all of the time. Earn your calories, right? Like, it's almost like, you know, I'm going to work out so hard so I can earn this food. Okay. So that's one way, earning your food. And then the other way is, okay, I ate a ridiculous amount of food yesterday. So today I'm going to spend multiple hours working out to try and undo the damage. And I think a lot of people do this and they don't even realize that it's actually a really unhealthy behavior. And it's a form of purging. It's a form of purging. The undoing, right? Purging is trying to undo any kind of damage that you think you've done.
Okay, so do you think, because you're on medication for like 20 years, Do you think that affected your appetite and your relationship with food?
Oh, yeah. I think honest, oh my gosh, yeah. So I really think that well, first of all, at age 9, your brain you're developing. You're still a kid.
Baby.
Yeah, a baby. And I think that these drugs definitely do something to your brain. I think they do something to appetite. I've worked with multiple people who have been on psych meds where they have gained weight. I think they mess with your appetite. And I do. Because I remember age 9 when I was put on these drugs, right after I was put on these drugs, my relationship with food, it was just like, I couldn't stop eating. So I really do think it stems back 100% to the psych meds. But the thing is, you start taking Adderall. Adderall is a controlled substance. And Adderall, people use Adderall as a diet pill. And I remember back when I was 16, that's when I was, because I didn't get placed on like Adderall until probably like mid-teens. I loved it because I didn't have much of an appetite on it. And this is back when like my relationship with food, fitness, and body was very distorted and unhealthy. But so I think the SSRIs can cause a lot of weight gain. I know people that get on these meds and they gain weight. And then I know people who get on Adderall and they get skinny pretty damn quick because you lose your appetite.
So I totally heard what you said when you talked about I'm going to exercise this off. I've heard it the other way too. I smiled when you said it. You're going to earn your calories, like you're going to do all this work so you can earn your food. Yeah. I've heard it talked about that way, but that wasn't me. I was definitely, oh my gosh, I ate too much. Now I need to go run 5 miles.
But and the thing is with this though, it's like, if we're eating processed junk food, right, that is covered in seed oils, drowning in seed oils, we all know that you don't run that off. Like seed oils literally stay in your body, but up to 2 to 3 years. So you're not running that off. You can't run off systemic inflammation.
Right. So yeah, so the end of that was when I used to think that way, it was because I had no thought of nutrition at all. It was just like these calories. Yeah. I ate these calories. I'm going to burn those calories and then I won't get fat. Did you have a similar mindset, or do you find clients that come to you with that mindset? Because that was for sure my mindset. I thought ice cream and like pizza, that was equivalent to a piece of chicken, whatever, because it was just calories.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. That was me. I was that girl. Like I was so obsessed with numbers and not nutrient density. And like, if I had X amount of calories, like, oh, okay, well, that's 400 calories. I can go on the treadmill for X amount of time and I'll burn all of that off. I mean, and I honestly think that's probably, I mean, I was younger, so I probably burned off calories a lot easier, but like, that was my mindset. And I think the only reason why I never got significantly overweight is because of the constant working out all of the time, which is not healthy. Like we all have different relationships with people, relationships with food, relationships with money, relationships with fitness. And we all need to work on all of those. And I think I see it because I was one of those girls that was a fit spo chick and lived that balanced lifestyle, everything in moderation, workout, blah, 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 blah. But we're missing the bigger picture, right? Like we need to be working on our actual relationship with food and fitness. And I just don't think, I think many people don't have healthy relationships with exercise, but they don't even realize it.
You know, I hate to bounce back to this drug thing, but I'm just wondering, you know, there was a reason you went on the drugs. You know, it wasn't just random. So what is the substitute? Someone's out there, they're anxious, they're depressed, they cannot manage it, they're miserable. Like, what do they do?
Okay. So I look back at my childhood and all of the foods that I was eating at the time, processed. So processed, high sugar. I mean, I was very close with my grandmother I would go over to her house all the time. Everything in that house was sugar, right? So I really look back and I'm like, I think my mental health could potentially be extremely poor from poor gut health. And so if you have a child right now, like, and I'm not trying to like, what's the word? Like down talk ADHD, ADD, any of those things by any means, because I do think they're real. But I mean, let's be real, probably 8 out of 10 people have ADD, ADHD. Like we live in such a modern world. And I do feel like a lot of times, like if you go to a doctor and you say, I feel X, Y, and Z, they're going to say, oh, okay, you have ADD, you have ADHD. Here, let's write you a script. I mean, let's be real. Like our modern world is so crazy. We were not meant to multitask the way we are doing things today. Like all of our brains are going to be going like this. Like, come on, let's be real. With that being said, I think a lot of the mental health issues we are seeing today, maybe not all of them, but I think a huge contribution is poor diets, the sugars, the dyes, an overload of toxins, like everything. We live in a modern world. We can't escape it. We can't. However, we can do our best to reduce our toxic burden. And a big part of that is diet and just trying to eat as clean as possible. And I know that's easier said than done when you have children. Like, I get it, but all you can do is your best.
Yeah, I think I didn't really find out. I believe I have like ADD, and I found out when I was 35. I'm still 35, so it's definitely something that I'm learning. And you kind of you view the world differently, and definitely food plays a huge role. It helped me with my mental illness as well. That was separate from the ADD. But I wanted to know, you felt a lot of people, including yourself, felt a lot of shame with food addiction. Like, how do you help clients break free from that cycle?
Yeah, so it's not an overnight process. All of my clients are with me for a minimum of 6 months because there's lots of things that we have to work on, right? The first piece is acceptance and having an understanding, right? Of, oh, okay, like I actually have an addiction. And I actually just wrote about this tonight. I feel like there is so much shame when it comes to food addiction because, well, one, we need food to eat, but nobody wants to talk about, oh yeah, I have, I'm actually a food addict, because it's not sexy. It's not glamorous. But let me tell you, I think more people are struggling with it than not. Like processed foods are literally engineered. They're engineered to hijack your reward system. Like, so yes, there are some very lucky individuals that have the ability to moderate. I am not one of them. So we need to start normalizing, like, hey, like there is nothing wrong with you if you can't moderate certain foods. And like, why are we going to be ashamed about it? Everybody has their stuff. Okay. And once we start, I really coach my clients to just like, let's start shedding light on it, right? Like, I'm not saying you have to go on social media and be like, oh yeah, like I'm a food addict, but you can start like, talk about it with your family members. Like, don't be so ashamed. And if you don't want to say, I have a sugar addiction problem, you can literally just be like, you know what? I'm actually not eating those foods, because whether you can moderate them or not, it's still garbage. It's still not good for your body, because the ultimate goal, right? We all like to lose weight. Come on, let's be real. We all like to lose weight. But at the end of the day, the ultimate goal should be health and longevity. And eating garbage foods, you're literally feeding disease. So I think just really educating, building awareness, and literally just being okay with like, yeah, I can't eat that stuff because I get completely out of control with it. I think once we start shedding light on it, it doesn't allow the addiction to grow and thrive.
Sorry, I was being the button pusher, and I'm not the button pusher. Ellie's the button pusher. But my question has to do with what you said about food addiction. For sure, when I ate a standard American diet, I don't think you could have convinced me that food addiction was a thing. because I heard my whole life from everyone from, especially I can remember my dad saying it, like just eat in moderation, like a little of everything is fine. Like, I don't even know what that means. Looking back in hindsight, I can see the symptoms clear as day. Like, the food would call me from the cupboard. I would swear I'm not going to eat it again. And then the 24 hours later, there I am shoving my face with a full bag of Doritos or whatever. But I don't think I discovered that about myself until I went keto and then carnivore. And then I had that, 2020 hindsight. Do you find that, do you have to meet people where they are? Like, do they know that they have food addiction when they come to you, or is that something you have to kind of open their eyes to a little bit?
So it's funny you say that, because I went almost 30 years of my life not knowing I was a food addict. Like, I just thought there was something totally wrong. I'm like, something's going on because I can't moderate and this balance thing ain't working for me. And it wasn't until I literally found out about this food addiction course that my parents introduced me to, when I heard the words food addiction, like the light bulbs went off. I'm like, oh my gosh. So I actually, I do have an eval and like 15 questions that I typically will ask people. And if they answer 5 or more of them, I don't have them on the top of my head. But I do suggest they get help, because it's not just about willpower, right? Like, you need tools and strategies on how to navigate. And I do think a lot of people go towards the low carb, ketogenic, carnivore lifestyle because it definitely helps with food noise. However, that is just a piece of overcoming food addiction, right? Like, it's not going to save you. Like, you could still be binging on freaking pork rinds and deli meats, right? Like for me personally, I'm one of those people that, like, I was so bad in my food addiction. I was the girl that was literally binging on broccoli and carrots, because it's not just the food that we get addicted to. We also get addicted to the behavior. So I kind of do certain like phases with my clients, and it really depends where they're at. Some people come to me and they've already been kind of working on their food addiction stuff, but they need a lot more work. Some people are just like totally fresh. So I try to meet people with where they're at and really do, because if you are a full-blown food addict and you were going to start working with me, I would be bridging the gaps with you, but we would be getting off of your drug foods. Like, we're not weaning off of your drug foods. We're getting off of them immediately. Like, an alcoholic doesn't just say, okay, tomorrow I'm going to have 3 beers. Then the next day I'm going to have 2. And no, like, we get off the drug foods, but there's ways that we bridge the gaps to make it a little smoother and a little easier.
This is the perfect. Bruce asked, do we treat it like alcohol and other addictions, like a 12-step?
Yes, absolutely. Usually when I get on my first onboarding calls with my clients, this is the conversation I have with them. And this is what really, you have people who are super successful with food addiction, and then you have people who are constantly relapsing. The people who are extremely successful with food addiction are the people who treat it like any other addiction. So it's no different than an alcoholic. And this may sound a little crazy, but it's no different from somebody who's shooting up heroin. Like, your drug foods are drug foods. So food addiction, some people may laugh about food addiction. Some people may laugh about sugar addiction. Well, it's not a freaking joke, because it can get so out of control. And if you do not get food addiction under control, it's only a matter of time until insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, stroke, heart disease. Like, the type 2 diabetes is like skyrocketing right now. People are going blind. People are losing their limbs. Like, that's how serious food addiction is. As you can see, I get very worked up about this topic.
Yeah, we sorry. Yeah, we do too. And that's why we do this show, because it's like, once you know just a tiny bit of information and you start to change your life, it's like you can't shut up about it. So I love your passion for sure. And obviously you've been helping so many people. So like, processed foods, they like kind of hijack our brain's reward system, right? do you think like cutting them out and focusing on like the meat, the animal, nutrient dense foods is like one of the better strategies for long-term success with food addiction?
Yes. So I'm just going to tell you what I've seen in my practice, because if you go online, you're going to see probably a variety of ways how people are overcoming food addiction. So I'll give you an example, and I am not talking smack on this food addiction program, but this food addiction program is very different from mine. So there is it's called Bright Line Eating. Okay. And so in Bright Line Eating, it's a whole foods approach. You can have all of the starchy vegetables, all of the high glycemic fruits. It works for some people. The Bright Line Eaters are also documenting every single thing that they eat every single day. They're weighing all of their food. If that works for you, awesome, all the power to you. The way that I practice and coach my clients is we stick to a low glycemic approach, low carb, ketogenic. It really all depends where my client is, how they're feeling, and usually, honestly, most of my clients end up going super meat based. I see this work the best. I have had many people who try reintroducing higher carb things, higher like fruits and stuff, and it's very triggering to them. It wakes up the beast. I like to call food addiction the beast or Ed, right? The ultimate goal is to keep that asleep so we're not constantly fighting urges, right? Because that can get exhausting. I'm really also big on like eating 2 to 3 meals a day, having boundaries around food, because personally, I think counting macros all day, every day is mentally exhausting for many people. And I want to be able to teach my clients how to eat in a certain way where they don't have to track all the time. Now, I'm not opposed to tracking. I track every now and then when I'm working towards a specific goal. But in early stages of food sobriety, I think it can be a slippery slope, just because we love to obsess on certain things, right? Numbers, the scale, like calories, like all of those things. So I really try and kind of move away from that. But my approach is more low carb, ketogenic. For me personally, that's how I live my lifestyle. And that will probably be the way that I eat for the rest of my life.
I have a question. I'm going to shift gears a little bit here because you talked about your traumatic brain injury. That sounds pretty serious. I would like to know, like, how did that occur? What symptoms did you have when it happened? And then have you experienced healing from that? Are you still, suffering to some extent?
Yeah. So that happened. So psychiatric drug withdrawal, which I had talked about a little bit, that is very similar to a traumatic brain injury. It's a hit to your nervous system, right? So literally like right after I feel like I had fully recovered from that, it was like a double whammy. So I got my brain injury after that. All of the symptoms that I was experiencing with that injury was very similar to the psychiatric drug withdrawal symptoms. Right after the accident, I barely could exercise. Doing an air squat was made me sick. My vision got really messed up. I threw up like every night. Just a lot of neuro stuff going on. My memory, word finding, sometimes still. I'll stutter, or like I'll have a hard time finding words. I used to be a really big runner before my head injury. And like I was the girl that would go for a casual 10-mile run and I'll be back in a little while. And literally I'm 5.5 years out. And for the first time, like within this last month, I have finally been able to go a full month of running without getting sick, because for the longest time I would run like 1 or 2 miles and I would throw up afterwards, just neuro vision stuff. So I feel like I have had healing happen every year. It's been very, very slow, but I have other couple of things going on. I also have SIRS. So sometimes I get confused with what's what. Like, is this a SIRS episode or is this brain injury stuff? But I will say, like, right now in my life, I'm in a really good place. Like, I feel good energy wise. I feel like my brain's working really well. But yeah, it's been a ride.
If you guys don't know, Meghann is super near and dear to my heart because we've both been through SIRS. We both struggled with a food addiction. We both struggled with the mental health. We both struggled with our weight. And so she means a lot to me. Sorry.
Oh, no, thank you. That makes me want to cry.
I once heard someone, I want to say it was on our show, say that food addiction is a prison where you hold the keys. Right?
That gave me chills.
Right. They said it much more eloquently than that. But I have a question, and that is, I've been stuck in this before where I tried to get rid of all the drug foods, but the truth was that like every food is a drug food. Like I went down a line diet and I started chewing on short ribs like endlessly. So how do you combat the disordered thinking of being too restrictive? How do you help people find something where they can feel like for example, I let Coco Loco back in. Some food addiction people would say that is not cool. That has sweetener in it. But for me, it doesn't trigger me to eat other things. And it also makes me feel less restrictive. So it seems like it's good for me. But how do you help people get to that place? How do they discover that?
Okay, so I think that is a wonderful question. And I love that question because one, you cannot compare your journey to anybody else's. I've worked with so many people now, and everybody is so individualized. So what maybe Adrian can have that electrolyte. I can too. I love it. It makes me feel like, oh, I'm having something, and it doesn't trigger me. It may trigger somebody else, right? And so you have to look at yourself as your biggest experiment, okay? Your year 1 in food sobriety may look very different from year 5. And I say that because hopefully with time, you can allow yourself a little more freedom where you feel like empowered to make decisions that work for you, right? Like, I feel like I'll give you a great example, okay? Because I almost felt ashamed about this. And I'm like, why am I going to feel ashamed about this? So I've been ketogenic, low carb for 5.5, it'll be 6 years in August. And, I was super ketogenic. I started low carb, then it was ketogenic, then I was carnivore, and then like more low carb. So let's be specific here. So low carb is about 150 grams of carbohydrates a day. Ketogenic is about 20 grams of carbs a day. Okay. So I did a strict 7 months straight of carnivore. Like I had coffee and electrolytes, and I was dairy free, but that's like in spices. God forbid I have coffee. Oh my gosh, and spices. So anyways, I just felt like for me personally, I did feel really good, but I didn't feel like I was I was feeling a little restrictive and I wasn't really that happy. So I started bringing in some vegetables and I was starting to feel freedom and it wasn't waking up food noise for me. And I actually had recently started to reintroduce like some butternut squash, and some mashed potato a mashed potato and butternut squash is not, it's a higher starchy vegetable, right? However, I am metabolically healthy. That is a food from the earth, and it does not wake up food noise for me. Now, if we were to take that potato, cut it up, put it in the air fryer, make French fries, whole different story. That's not happening for me because I know I would binge on those. So what you need to ask yourself, so the one thing that should always stay the same in food sobriety is we always stay off of our drug foods, right? Always. Now, when it comes to like whole foods, real foods, you need to be willing to ask yourself, okay, does this steal my peace? Meaning, if I eat this, is this going to wake up a bunch of food noise in my brain where I'm going to be out of control? If the answer is yes, then that's probably a food that you don't want to have. And only you are going to be the one to figure out what works for you and what doesn't. I'll give you a great example. I can't remember if I told you about this on our last call, but the Keto Brick. I think it's a wonderful product. I think it's clean. I think it's a great alternative, a great meal replacement for many people. I tried reintroducing it a couple months ago. No way. totally out of control. Well, I didn't get out of control, but it woke up food noise, and I knew well enough, like, oh no, this is not an option for me. And I was really upset about it because they do taste really good. But like, it woke up too much food noise that I didn't want to deal with. And you have to be willing to ask yourself, are you willing to compromise? If you have this, do you really want to be battling that food noise? For me personally, I like my life super peaceful, and I know what I can have where my life is peaceful, and you have to be the one to discover that. So I would also recommend too, you can create boundaries with certain foods too. I'll give you an example of that. So like, maybe you are somebody who really likes cheese, but you overeat it. Okay. Well, then I would say, okay, well, maybe if you're not ready to get rid of cheese, maybe that's just something you allow yourself to have when you go out to dinner and you get a salad or something and you want to have cheese on your salad. Or maybe you really like nuts. Like, I was one of those people, I don't allow nuts in my life anymore because that's a binge food for me. But there was a time where I did build a boundary around it where I was like, okay, if I want to have some nuts, when I go to Whole Foods, I'll pre-package them. They'll be in a container. So I'm already portioned them. I'll have them, and that's it. They don't go into my house. Like, there's boundaries that you can create for yourself. But like I said, there's no one size fits all for food addiction. Like with all of my clients, right? It's a one-on-one approach. We discuss things together. They tell me what's working for them, what's not. And then I give them other tools and strategies on what we could potentially implement. And that's why I say it's not an overnight fix. Like, and there's no finish line either. I think the people who are successful in food sobriety, like I said earlier, they treat it like it's a true addiction, and they never get complacent. And we must continue to feed the lies with the truth. So when that addictive brain pops inside of your head and is like, oh, you can just have one, you have to be willing to talk back to that addictive brain and say, hell no. Like, I know what happens if I just have one. It's not going to be one, it's all hell is going to break loose. So yeah, I just know I kind of went on a tangent there.
No, that's great. The more information that we can get out to our viewers, that's great, because this is kind of like a complicated topic, but I'm really learning a lot. So I have little ones. I have a 4-year-old, almost 5, and a 2-year-old who's almost 3. Oh my gosh, I just realized that they're aging up soon. Anyway, they're eating a pretty much like a carnivore diet or hyper carnivore diet with some fruit every once in a while. And we do allow them to, like if they go out to a restaurant or something, they'll get a choice. Like, what do you want to eat? But you need to have a meat with it, right?
Yeah.
What is like something that, do you have any advice for, because we're all like feeding our kids like a meat-based diet, to like prevent like addictions? Because I feel like the foods you introduce young, it can kind of trigger into an addiction or a comfort kind of thing as they age. I know that happened to me. Like, my dad would make fettuccine Alfredo, and that was like my comfort food, and I ended up eating like pounds of pasta at a time as an adult. So I was wondering if you had any advice about that.
So I think that's a great question. And I think as adults, right, or as parents, we also want to tread lightly because we don't want to create eating disorders either,
Yes.
right? And so I think the best we can do is just lead by example and educate and have honest conversations with our children, right? Like, we don't need to sugarcoat things. We can just, say, well, you know what, like let's be real with them. Like, these certain foods actually can make us really, really sick. I mean, let's be real. Like, the cancers we're seeing today, like children with type 2 diabetes, like, it's outrageous. So I really think just leading by example, educating, and doing our best as parents. I mean, we live in a real world, like a modern world, and our kids are going to have birthday cakes and all of that. But if we can at least minimize, the exposures of, processed foods as best as we can, then I think we're doing a pretty good job.
Yeah, as a mom, I can say, because, my kids, my older son is 19 and he hasn't changed his diet at all. He just eats what we brought him up with, right?
Yep.
And he has no desire to change. My younger one is 16, and at 15, he essentially went carnivore. But it was because of his ADHD, and like nothing had helped. So I feel like in a way, almost that ADHD in that regard was a little bit of a blessing, because it's like he doesn't want to have cake. Like he did go trick-or-treating with his friends at the age of 15, which I'm like, hey, I don't mind if teenagers come trick-or-treating.
Oh
They
yeah, that's
more
great.
stuff. But then he just gave all the candy away. Like he had no desire to eat it because he knows how it makes him feel. I'm only
That's
surmising
awesome.
this because he's like, I didn't eat the candy, Mom. And I think it's like in that sense that having the ADHD is like a blessing, because he's like, okay, I know that when I eat meat, I feel better, and when I eat this other junk, he can really see that it's junk. And how badly it affects him. Whereas if you don't have something like that, it is way more tempting to just go and have that piece of cake or whatever. And
that's a smart kid. Nice job, Mom.
Oh, you know what? I give a lot of the credit to him. I gave him the opportunity. I helped him transition with familiar foods. We just made carnivore versions of them. And now he's full on like, give me a chuck roast, give me a picanha. It was just, I helped him transition. But I'm telling you right now, to stick to it at that age, he really had to do it himself, because he could go and get free food from school for breakfast and lunch every single day. It's free where we live. So, and he just stopped doing it because he used to go get a muffin or whatever pizza or whatever they were serving in the cafeteria. He just stopped doing it. I do pack food for him. I make him eggs in the morning. He asks for it now. And he prefers that. So it was a little bit of a transition, but boy, I think because he noticed the difference in his own mind and his own thoughts, the way he felt, that it wasn't a hard sell at all. It really wasn't.
Awesome.
So my question, you talked at the beginning a lot about, that we live in this modern world and that, you can't escape it, but like maybe you could mitigate it. And you talked about the toxic burden. So I know once I got into carnivore, that led me to be like, what the heck is in this shampoo and what's in this hand soap? And were you referring to anything like that? Have you changed any of those types of like personal?
So I try to obviously like all of my, I don't really use skincare. I wash my face with water. But like shampoo, I'll try to do like the natural shampoos, cleaning products. I won't wear like the earbud stuff. I don't put toxic things on my skin like sunscreen, any of that. Just all of that. Alcohol consumption, absolutely not. Seed oil, stuff like that. Like all we can do is our best. Interesting story. My daughter and I were in Florida and we drove down from New Hampshire and we stayed in this beautiful neighborhood in South Carolina and loved it. Like I would buy a place there. However, there was a massive 5G tower on the property. And I was like, it was like such a deal breaker. And it was interesting. And I wasn't panicking because I was only there for like a night. But like that type of exposure, like that's the stuff I'm talking about. Like that's like full blown radiation, like we're living in every single day. Like, and the air, call me crazy. And maybe I am because I read a lot of books and stuff, but like the air smelled funny. The air smelled like radiation. But that's what I mean by like the modern world. Like we can't just like we also have to live our lives, right? And find that kind of, here I am using the word balance, but like, we can't be afraid to live our lives. You know what I'm saying? Like we all are going to die. But I know for me personally, I want to live the longest and fullest life that I can and really try to avoid the modern day diseases that we're seeing today. And we do that by taking care of our bodies, eating healthy, working out, trying to, use clean products in our house, on our skin, maybe not live in areas with 5G towers, stuff like that.
I told you she was my girl. Usually the tinfoil hat banner is for me.
That was great. I had to.
I love it. My family has farms down in southern Wisconsin, and they put up the windmills, and they swore that there was so much EMF coming off those windmills that like dogs would get stuck circling the windmill.
Oh
like
my
they
God.
said there was so
I
much.
believe it.
We didn't even know EMF back then, because this is like, we're talking like, what did they pop all those up 15 years ago?
Yeah.
Anyway, okay. So you also help people lose weight, right?
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that program? Like if people were interested in working with you, like how do you help them lose weight?
So a lot of people think they're eating healthy, when they're not eating healthy. I hear it all the time. I'm eating pretty healthy. I'm like, okay, let's hear. What do you eat? Oatmeal, bananas, yogurt. Okay, what kind of yogurt? It's usually covered in sugar, you know, all of the fruits. And I'm not down. I do think that if you are metabolically healthy and you do not struggle with food addiction, I think fruit can be an appropriate food. But I teach that most people who come to me for weight loss, because not everybody struggles with food addiction, right? Some people just really need to learn how to fuel their bodies properly. Many people also struggle with emotional eating and boredom eating. But that's not necessarily food addiction, right? So really just kind of teaching them how to navigate through that, giving them, you know, tools. I like this one. It's called HALT, okay? HALT. Am I hungry, anxious, lonely, tired, or bored? Like, let's be real. How many times have you opened up your fridge to just look inside your fridge and be like, oh, what should I eat? But you're probably really not that hungry, right? So really kind of slowing down, pumping the brakes, analyzing yourself. I think everybody, whether you're a food addict or not, you should really look at yourself as your biggest experiment. Like, how do I operate at my best? That might be different. Like, that might be different from like Adrian or me, right? Like, we're all very different and very individualized. So working on the food piece, I think a lot of people think that, oh, I got to go, you know, kill myself in the gym to, you know, get the weight off. And hate to break it to you, but like 80 to 85% of it is nutrition. With that being said, fitness is so stinking important, specifically strength training. Obviously aerobic stuff is very important too, but in terms of like longevity, we want to build muscle mass. It's going to keep us healthy. It's going to keep us strong. It's going to get you off the toilet when you're 70 and your 80s. It's going to protect your hips. So when you slip on ice when you're 65, you don't break your hip and die, because hip fractures are serious and many people die from hip fractures. So we want to build strong bones and have muscle surrounding those strong bones. And I think a lot of people are not everybody, but a lot of people are missing out on the strength training piece, especially, and I'm not talking smack, but a lot of people in the low carb ketogenic carnivore space, they do have a lot of significant weight loss from just the diet. And they're like, oh yeah, I don't need to work out. No, you need to work out. You need to work out. Because, well, and if you are losing weight, like, don't you want to be strong? We need to make it less about skinny and more about strong.
Absolutely. I would love to give you an opportunity to plug anything that you like. I'm going to show your Instagram. Please share.
Like plug, like, what do you mean? Sorry.
Like your podcast, your business.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, I'm most active on my Instagram, Meghann Alice, MEGHANN.Alice. It's right there. I actually just did a Valentine's Day promo for my one-on-one coaching. It ended Sunday. With that being said, for anyone who is listening right now and is interested in my food addiction or weight loss coaching, send me a message. If you sign up within 24 hours, I will give you the Valentine's Day promo, which is actually better than my Black Friday promo. So there's that. My podcast is Meghann Unfiltered. You can find me on Spotify, and I just got on iTunes. I'm not a tech person, but I managed to get up on iTunes. Meghann Unfiltered. We talk a lot about food addiction on there, but a lot of lifestyle stuff too. I really want to empower people to just start living their greatest life. And I know that sounds kind of cliche and a little tacky, but it starts with your health, right? Because without your health, you have nothing. If you don't feel good in your own skin, mentally, physically, emotionally, you're going to be lacking confidence. Okay. So we got to build up your confidence. We got to build up your self-trust. Then you're going to start feeling unstoppable. And then before you know it, you're going to be taking on the world. So you can find me there.
Thank you so much.
That is fabulous. I don't think we got to spin our wheel last time you were here, and you probably don't even know because you were late, but we have a wheel that we spin. And so I'm going to share that wheel on my screen right now, and we're going to spin a meaty question for you.
Oh, gosh.
So here is our Lioness Lifestyle live wheel, and I'm going to give it a spin.
This is so cool. Who's in charge of all this technology? Great work.
I'm in charge of the wheel.
Oh my God.
And here's the meaty question we have hunted down for you. I hope you like all my puns. Are there any specific types of meat or sources that you prefer to include in your diet?
Okay, so this is like a really hard question. I like them all. Okay, so I typically go through phases where I am super boring and I'll eat the same thing over and over again just because I really like it. So I love ribeye steaks, but I ate so much of them that I kind of got sick of them. So then I went into like 85-15 where I was making like these beef bowls, really like those. The last couple of days, I'm in Florida and there's this restaurant and they have these pork ribeyes. They're pork ribeyes.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Good.
So it's like a pork chop, but like a little fattier. So stinking good. So I'm gonna go with the pork ribeye for today.
Well, I
when
think
Nia
you
was
could
over,
inspired me. I want to give that a try.
dude,
So good.
it's so good. Nia and I when Nia was in my house, I had made them pork ribeye. It's delicious. It's so good.
It's so good. And the cool part, it's way cheaper than a beef ribeye.
Yes.
Yeah.
What I like to do is cut them really, really little and then just pan fry them. They come all crispy. It's like, oh, so good. Okay.
So
I'm
good.
done.
Okay, I think it's time for our roar. Are you ready? Did we make you roar last time?
Yeah, you did. I feel so weird doing it, but I'm gonna do it.
Me too. Me too. I didn't make this up. I just joined the show. I'm just in for the fun.
Okay.
Okay. All right, everybody get your roars ready and we'll be sure to pop them up. I think Cristie's in charge of pushing the buttons today. Push button. Just kidding. Ready? 3, 2, 1.
Roar!
We did it. See, it wasn't that bad. It wasn't that
No, it's
bad.
funny.
Yes,
so-
Eric. Roar of the
I
week.
love it.
I think Cristie is a
Oh,
favorite.
that's a big one.
Oh, that's a
Yes,
good one.
hey,
Barb.
Was fabulous.
My daughter's over there secretly roaring too, but she's just not showing her face.
Yay.
Oh, that's awesome. I love that. Yay. And a meow for Pixel. Thank you. She was here earlier meowing, but she didn't hop up.
And make sure if you guys are watching the replay, please write roar down in the comments so we can thank you for staying to the end of the episode. That really helps out our channel. And of course, we get the message out to everyone about Lioness Lifestyle and our amazing guest, Meghann.
Thank you so much for having me back on.
Absolutely. I would like to thank you so much, Meghann, for being on our show. I enjoyed talking to you. Actually, both times we spoke to you, I thoroughly enjoyed it. Speaking of our comments, we got a comment, it was a few weeks back now, about someone wanting specific information about type 1 diabetes and the carnivore diet. So please, please, please tune in next week. I believe she was here just there she is, just roaring with us.
There's Amy.
Miss Amy is going to be our guest next week, and she knows all about type 1 diabetes and eating carnivore diet and how that's helped her keep her blood sugar nice and stable and under control. So we'd love to see you back here next Tuesday for another fantastic episode of Lioness Lifestyle. Thanks for watching, everyone, and we'll
Have
see
a
you
good
soon.
night.
Good night. Bye.